Alright, hello everyone, how are you all doing today? I myself am doing rather well. Now, this is episode 8 of Stargirl. This is the this is the second part to the Cindy Shiv storyline that started last episode. Now, I gotta say, real quick, that this episode is isn't quite as good as the last one. I did like the last episode more, but that's mostly because the last episode had more to speculate on, I suppose. And this one is basically just checking the boxes on whether you were correct or not for some of the stuff. So I do have less to say on this episode, so it's going to be a bit of a quicker review, but it still offers plenty and has mostly good signs that the show is still on track. Now, season 2 has been announced, but the issue with that is that it'll exclusively be going to the CW, which has been known to put out trash. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. And so far, the only real reason this show is good as it is so far is the DC money that's been put into it. Now, there are rumors that they won't be reducing the budget or the changing up the writing staff too much. And honestly, why would they? This is a pet project. Well, not a pet project per se, but a project very close to Jeff Johns' heart. So I don't see him relinquishing too much control of it over to the CW writers or anything of that nature. If it's doing well enough to earn another season, though, why wouldn't you put it exclusively on the streaming service? It doesn't make sense. DC Universe is struggling to get by and does need more shows on it. This show obviously has a fan base, so why not kind of push those push the fan base into the subscription service? Anyways, that's at least what I think. Surely some fans would migrate over. Anyways, enough real world stuff. Let's get back to the show. We begin with Pat speeding through a long stretch of road. I first assumed that this was him rushing to get Courtney to a hospital. I'll remind you, in the last episode, she had her palms cut and was down for the count, but the situation isn't as clear as that or complicated as that. It really was just him trying to crash the car. More on that in a few seconds, as we cut back to Barbara and Icicle having some dinner after they were able to close the deal mentioned last episode. So a lot of this show is just trying to create friction between Pat and Barbara and trying to bring Icicle and Barbara closer together. Uh, Courtney wakes up and we get the full breakdown of what Pat was doing at the very beginning. He had to check Courtney into a hospital. In order to do that, though, he had to cover up her injuries by saying it was an accident. And for it to be claimed as an accident, there had to be a police report. And so he had to crash the car, give himself some bruises, and explain away the cuts that Courtney had as well. Uh, Beautifully executed, I suppose. I can't find too much wrong with the plan, the reasoning, and things of that nature. Although I'm sure someone else could, but it's a sufficient reasoning for me. We get some great acting here between Courtney and Pat as they argue about telling Barbara Courtney's mother about the superheroing that she's doing. Courtney is able to stop Pat by promising that she'll take the time to recover and she'll take it seriously and get plenty of rest and things like that. They'll tell Barbara after the ISA is dealt with, or else Barbara will actually put a stop to it all, which is a fair reasoning, I would say. A quick cut takes us back to the ISA lair where Cindy reports her fight with Stargirl. Although Cindy believed that she was going to receive some sort of praise, only to be reprimanded by her father, Dr. Ito. He tells her that Stargirl was in the tunnels, that they could have trapped her there, or she could have reported that Stargirl was down in the tunnels, something to that effect. And it really was an easy place to trap her. He explains to Cindy why he now needs to explain himself to the others of the ISA, and he's certainly not happy with any of it. In fact, during this interaction, Cindy pushes him so far, he actually threatens her with something she is genuinely afraid of. He threatens to take off his hood. We, of course, are familiar with his reptilian eyes, but this does become the first time we, as the audience, see Cindy back down from her father. Back at the pit stop, actually, Rick wants to do something, anything, because Courtney, the word of Courtney's injury has gotten to them, but he has no good ideas except full-on assault on Cindy. But that's not going to accomplish much, obviously. Although my problem with this scene is that he gets shut down by Beth, of all people. If you've been keeping up with my reviews, you already know that I have no love lost for the Beth character. I believe Rick is rightfully angry, and Beth is suddenly the one to be the voice of reason is just out of nowhere. But I guess it is within her character. Not only does she say she has a plan, but guess what? The plan is, of course, poorly thought out. Only marginally better than Rick's, because it could have easily ended up in the same result, just with extra steps. Before we can get to that, though, we have gone back to the hospital, where it looks like Courtney is being released. Pat is taking her home. She looks into Brainwave's room. Wow, funny little scene, but something easily to happen. It's not so much of a coincidence. Where we see Henry still sits watching over his father. Courtney tries to reach out to him, kind of just saying, "Hi, Henry." But she is kind of brutally shut down as Henry just kind of closes the door on her. I've said before, this is going to really come down to a fight for Henry's allegiance, for Henry to join a particular side. If he can become one of the heroes, would definitely be an ideal situation for our new JSA. Of course, Courtney gets back home and actually gets a bonding moment between Mike and herself. He offers her some pizza rolls that he wouldn't usually give up for anything, apparently. But it does serve to strengthen their bond, which is nice. At the same time, you can go downstairs to the basement. We find Pat there, trying to talk to the cosmic staff, trying to ask it to protect Courtney instead of just, dragging her towards danger. he wants the cosmic staff to keep her out of trouble as much as possible, and he reasons that his Starman was already an adult, already been crime fighting for some time before he actually got the cosmic staff, so it's kind of just rushing her into that position. Pat's unsure if he got through to the staff, but we do see it light up for a brief moment. We'll have to wait and see just how the relation between Courtney and the staff changes from then on, or if it changes at all. Of course, it might not. We then get another fracture in Barbara and Pat's relationship when he tries to explain what's been going on, but Barbara excuses herself from the conversation with the fact that she's been traveling all day, probably filled with worry on her trip, and is, of course, justifiably exhausted at the end of the day. The Stargirl household aside, we get a scene of Icicle hunting a man that he seemingly knows was involved in the supposed accident that took his wife's life. Whew, that's a bit of a mouthful. It's actually quite chilling watching Icicle take this guy out. There's no real outburst of anger, no, it's just a cold fury with some slight satisfaction at the end when he freezes his target and lets him shatter upon the floor. Next, we have Henry finally awaking to his telekinesis as he desperately tries to find some pain medication. As he's doing so, a pill is left levitating right in front of him, and of course, he figures that he's the one doing that. Not much to say on a lot of these events, because in my opinion, it's all been good, and we are essentially just receiving the payoffs from the last episode. So when the sun comes up for the next day, we find Yolanda and Rick spying on Cindy's house from across the street. Pat shows up to basically save them. He, of course, had told Courtney earlier in the episode he would gather what information he could on Cindy, so he's basically there for the same reason as Yolanda, Beth, and Rick. Beth, of course, is being a spaz once again and tries shuffling up to Cindy's door, and when Cindy's stepmom, Bobby, answers, we finally get to hear her brilliant plan. Now keep control of yourself, because it'd be understandable to facepalm. Beth says that she is there to ask Cindy for cheerleading lessons. That's right, her big plan. Asking for cheerleading lessons so she can get a look inside of the house. Pat thankfully comes to her rescue and is able to get at her side to help her get inside. Some awkward, not so funny conversation tries to happen, but of course, Beth's character just sucks out all of the humor from these scenes. Although she does manage to get the goggles on and is able to sneak off into Cindy's room, where she's then able to find an old photo of Dr. Ito that Cindy has on her bedroom mirror, her vanity set. He is supposed to be dead after being convicted of war crimes and sentenced to death. So what's he doing underneath the town with reptilian skin? That's yet to be found out. While this is happening, Cindy has taken the liberty to visit Courtney at her home, and in a very mean girl type of way, she spends some time with Courtney, which is actually nice to see them just together. and not really in fight mode or anything. But then, just before she leaves, she reveals that she had recognized Courtney, but right now she isn't ready to reveal who she is to her own father because she would lose the chance to get the recognition for taking out Stargirl uh, and the rest of the new JSA. So, kind of a ploy to be self-serving and things of that nature. She has the possibility of getting sidelined for her trouble and such, so she's trying to get all the glory for herself. Cindy returns home after leaving Courtney, and of course, Beth and Pat haven't been able to get out of there yet. But thankfully, Pat is hidden under the sink as he's trying to repair a clog, and Beth has to be thrown out the window. But unfortunately for us, no harm comes to her as Rick is there to catch her. Pat, meanwhile, makes his own escape once he finishes with the sink, and what a hasty escape it has to be, because Bobby, throughout their interactions, has been just coming on strong to Pat. She is thirsty, and I guess this is the first fly to wander near her. Courtney, meanwhile, is suiting up, getting ready to take on Cindy, because, like the wonderful villainess that Cindy is, she has threatened Courtney's friends before she had left her. Henry, on the flip side, has discovered his father's brainwave outfit and a certain letter that reveals his relationship with Cindy has been fabricated by their fathers. So what is Henry left to do but to race off to Cindy's place, most likely to get some answers? Here, Cindy has finally gotten a chance to notice that her room has been tampered with, but in a fit of fury, you have Stargirl crashing into her room, and she is just full on fight mode at this point and is on the attack. A furious fight eventually leads them outside, where they get into a deadlock until Henry drives up on them, and with emotions running high, yeah, his emotions, they're about to kill each other, so their thoughts are just heavy with the thought of beating one another. So again, emotions are so very high here that Henry is able to read the thoughts of the two girls, and it aggravates him to the point of eruption. Literally, he explodes in a wave of psychic energy. Both girls get knocked back from each other, but they're not knocked out. Before the fight can continue, though, Cindy is dragged away by her father's minions. It's at this point that Courtney does try to talk to Henry once again, because they can't find what happened to Cindy. They both missed the three guys dragging her down to the sewers. But her thoughts are confusing him. She's thinking about Brainwave, thinking about Cindy, thinking about the fight, and all that, and it's simply too much for him, and he has to get away. All this, of course, has been caught on camera by Dr. Ito, who was watching his home, and he finally knows for sure that Henry has his father's powers. In a word, all of this to me, noise. This is the kind of hero stuff that I want out of my superhero shows. Of course, mine is Beth. I'm very excited for next week's episode, but I have to ask, can Stargirl keep up this level of quality? We'll just have to wait and see, of course. But I hope it does. You know, we deserve good superhero shows. We don't deserve Batwoman and Supergirl and The Flash. We deserve more things that are close to Arrow Season 1 and Stargirl Season 1, or as of right now, Stargirl Season 1. I once again would like to say that I understand I didn't have too much to say this time around, mostly because there wasn't much to speculate on, and there wasn't even stuff to really rip into, or at least not new stuff to rip into. And there are only so many ways that I can say something was well done. But anyways, that does that about does it for me. If you have any comments about the episode, go ahead and share those down below. Otherwise, subscribe for more Stargirl reviews, and I will see you guys next time. I hope you take care.